On June 14, 2012, Michael Donovan set out on what was supposed to be a relaxing yacht trip through the Caribbean. A seasoned traveler and avid sailor, the 45-year-old American businessman had taken time off from his hectic life in New York to enjoy the open sea. He had rented a luxury yacht, the Sea Breeze, in Nassau, Bahamas, and planned a week-long journey through the tropical waters, stopping at small islands. The trip had been peaceful, the days filled with clear skies, gentle waves, and the quiet solitude he had longed for. That morning he had navigated toward a remote stretch of open water, planning to sail toward Grand Turk by sunset. The ocean was calm, and the air was humid. Michael enjoyed his breakfast on the deck, soaking in the view. He checked the forecast before leaving, ensuring the weather would remain stable. By early afternoon he was miles from any land, fully embracing the isolation that made sailing so thrilling for him. Without warning, the wind shifted. The once blue sky darkened and heavy clouds formed on the horizon. Michael knew the weather in this region could change suddenly, but he had not expected the storm to move in so fast. The waves grew violent within an hour, tossing the yacht like a toy. The wind howled and rain slammed against the deck. Michael tried to maintain control, gripping the wheel with all his strength as the yacht tilted and groaned under the storm's pressure. A sudden deafening crack echoed as a massive wave crashed into the vessel's side. Water flooded the deck, and before he could react, another wave struck. The yacht lurched violently, and Michael lost his footing, slamming hard against the railing. The storm's force overwhelmed the boat, and the hull split in seconds. Michael scrambled for the emergency raft as the yacht sank beneath the relentless waves. By the time the storm passed, the sea had swallowed the Sea Breeze whole, leaving nothing but debris floating on the surface. Michael clung to the small inflatable life raft, his breath ragged, his body aching from the impact. His hands trembled as he scanned the endless horizon. There was no land in sight, only the vast, unforgiving ocean. He was alone. The sun beat down mercilessly as the hours dragged on. Michael rationed the small supply of water and food he had managed to grab before abandoning ship. His body ached from exhaustion, but the worst part was the silence, the endless waiting. He knew his best chance of survival was to remain in the raft and hope for rescue. But as the sun dipped, another fear set in, the darkness. As night fell, the water around him grew eerily still. The sounds of the ocean changed, the gentle waves replaced by something more ominous. A faint splash echoed from somewhere nearby, then another. Michael's pulse quickened as he scanned the water, his eyes barely adjusting to the moon's dim light. Then he saw it. A smooth and deliberate shadow glided beneath the raft. Its shape was unmistakable. A shark. Its presence sent a shiver down Michael's spine. Michael had read about oceanic white-tip sharks, their tendency to stalk shipwreck survivors, and their relentless curiosity, which often turned into aggression. He stayed as still as possible, barely daring to breathe. Minutes passed, then an hour. The shark circled, sometimes vanishing into the darkness before reappearing closer. Michael clutched the small emergency knife in his hand, knowing it was a useless defense against a predator built for hunting. Then the attack came. The shark rammed the raft's side without warning, nearly flipping it over. Michael grabbed the ropes, trying to steady himself, but another jolt sent him crashing into the water. Panic surged through his body as he kicked desperately, trying to climb back onto the raft. Then searing pain. A crushing force clamped around his leg, dragging him downward. The water erupted in a flurry of bubbles as Michael thrashed, his screams lost beneath the surface. The shark's teeth tore through flesh, the pressure unbearable. Desperate, he stabbed at the shark with his knife, but the blade barely pierced its thick hide. The predator shook its massive head, ripping deeper into his leg before letting go. Michael fought his way back to the surface, gasping for air. Blood clouded the water around him, and he knew the shark wasn't finished. His vision blurred, his strength fading fast. He clawed his way back onto the raft, his hands slick with his blood. The pain in his leg was unbearable. His body was shaking uncontrollably. The shark circled again. Michael's breaths came in ragged gasps. He knew he wouldn't last much longer. The loss of blood was making him weak. His mind screamed for survival, but his body was failing him. He gripped the edges of the raft, his fingers tightening as the predator returned. Another strike. This time, the shark lunged straight onto the raft, its powerful jaws locking onto Michael's side. A violent thrash spun the raft, and Michael was yanked into the water again. His world turned into chaos, pain, water, darkness, then nothing. The ocean fell silent once more. The next morning, a passing cargo ship spotted the drifting raft. The crew rushed to investigate, lowering a lifeboat into the water. When they pulled the raft closer, they found what was left: torn fabric, scattered supplies, and blood-stained water. Michael Donovan was gone. His disappearance sent shockwaves through the sailing community, a grim reminder of the unforgiving ocean and the predators that lurked within it. The oceanic white-tip shark, known for its ruthless attacks on shipwreck survivors, had claimed yet another victim. On March 15, 2023, the clear blue waters surrounding the Maldives glistened brightly under the morning sun. The calm ocean gently washed against small islands scattered along the horizon. Beneath the surface lay a world of colorful coral reefs, tropical fish, and mysterious underwater caves waiting to be explored. Jason Morrow, a 31-year-old diver from Sydney, Australia, prepared to dive into these beautiful waters with his friends. Jason had been diving since he was a teenager, and his love for the ocean began early in life. Growing up near the coast, he spent weekends snorkeling and exploring underwater life. He quickly became skilled, earning advanced certifications and becoming a professional diving instructor. His friends admired his bravery, kindness, and calm nature underwater. Jason had traveled to many places known for diving, including the Great Barrier Reef in the Caribbean, but the Maldives had always been his dream destination. This trip finally brought Jason, 3 close friends, and a local dive guide to explore the rich marine life near the Maldives' famous Eerily Atoll. They had been diving together all week, photographing colorful fish, turtles, and manta rays. It was perfect, and Jason felt relaxed and happy. That day, they chose a popular dive site known for its clear waters and plenty of wildlife. Jason checked his diving gear carefully, always cautious and prepared. He and his friends jumped into the warm water, slowly descending toward the vibrant coral reef below. The underwater world was stunning. Bright-colored fish swam lazily around coral formations, and small sharks appeared far in the distance, moving slowly and peacefully. Jason felt comfortable and safe, gently swimming ahead, guiding his friends around colorful fish and coral. Then, a large shadow appeared near them. It was a tiger shark, easily recognizable by its striped markings. At first, the shark circled slowly, calmly gliding through the water. Jason and his friends watched carefully but did not feel afraid. They knew sharks often swam past divers without harming them. However, this shark began behaving differently. Its movements became faster, more unpredictable. Jason felt uneasy, watching closely as it suddenly changed direction and came directly toward him. Everything happened very fast. The shark lunged forward, opening its powerful jaws and biting into Jason's torso. Sharp teeth easily tore through his diving suit, slicing his skin and causing serious injuries instantly. Jason felt sharp pain as the shark shook him violently. Blood quickly filled the water, surrounding him in a thick cloud. His friends froze in fear, shocked at the sudden, brutal attack. Their hearts raced as they desperately swam toward Jason, waving their arms and trying to scare the shark away. The predator ignored them at first, continuing to thrash Jason's injured body back and forth. Jason was losing strength quickly. His vision blurred, and he struggled to breathe through the pain and shock. The shark finally let go, leaving Jason floating motionless in the blood-filled water. Jason's friends grabbed him quickly, pulling him upward toward the surface. The shark stayed nearby, still circling aggressively, watching closely as they tried to save their friend. They rushed upward toward the safety of their boat, carrying Jason's limp body between them. When they finally broke the surface, Jason's injuries were visible. His torso was severely wounded, bleeding heavily. His face was pale, his eyes closed tightly from shock. As the boat approached quickly, the divers shouted urgently for help. Its crew prepared to pull them from the water. The crew moved fast back on board, wrapping Jason in towels to slow the bleeding. Everyone could see how serious the attack had been. His friends stared helplessly, knowing the situation was dire. Jason lay still as the boat sped toward the shore, breathing weakly. His friends silently prayed he would survive, even as they felt terrified by the shark's sudden and deadly attack. The peaceful ocean now seemed dangerous and unpredictable, forever changed in their minds. The boat raced back toward shore, its engine loud against the quiet sea. Jason lay on the deck, barely moving. His breathing was faint and uneven. His friends knelt around him, fear clear in their eyes. They tried their best to stop the bleeding, using towels and whatever else they could find. On the beach, emergency workers waited anxiously. As soon as the boat arrived, they carried Jason onto a stretcher, rushing him to a waiting ambulance. The shark's bite had caused deep wounds across his torso, leaving severe injuries. Blood continued soaking through the towels as medics worked quickly. At the local hospital, doctors and nurses hurried Jason into surgery. The injuries were serious, and everyone knew time was running out. His friends waited quietly in a nearby room, hoping for good news. The minutes felt like hours as they sat together, silent and afraid. Outside the hospital, news spread quickly about the shark attack. Other divers and island tourists heard the story and began asking questions. Shark attacks were uncommon in this area. Many wondered how something like this could happen in such peaceful waters. Soon, news crews gathered near the hospital entrance, eager to hear updates about Jason's condition. The doctors worked hard, trying everything they could to save Jason's life, but his injuries were too severe, and despite all their efforts, Jason died from blood loss. The news spread quickly, leaving his friends and family devastated. Jason's death deeply affected the small diving community in the Maldives. People who had known him shared stories of his kindness and love for the ocean. Other divers became frightened, unsure if the waters were safe anymore. Experts debated why the shark had attacked so suddenly, wondering if something unusual had caused its aggression. Local authorities promised to investigate further. Soon after, they placed warning signs along beaches and advised divers to be cautious. Shark experts arrived to study why this attack happened, hoping to prevent something similar. In Jason's hometown of Sydney, Australia, friends and family held a quiet memorial by the ocean he loved. They shared stories about his life, his courage, and his kindness. His parents spoke about how diving had always brought Jason happiness, though now it had taken him away forever. After Jason was attacked in the Maldives, the area became a place people avoided. Tourists canceled diving trips, and businesses worried about their future. Some dive operators temporarily shut down, scared that something like this might happen again. Others demanded new safety rules and better protection for divers. Marine safety officials announced stricter diving rules, including more training for guides and more careful planning of dive locations. They hoped these measures would keep everyone safer, though no rule could bring Jason back. His friends struggled deeply with guilt and sadness. They replayed the attack repeatedly in their minds, wondering if they could have done something differently. Some could no longer dive, feeling too scared to return to the water. Months passed slowly, but the memory of Jason's attack remained fresh. The community never forgot how suddenly their peaceful dive had turned deadly. New divers arriving at the Maldives learned about the attack, reminding them always to respect the ocean and its hidden dangers. Over time, the fear faded slightly, though no one ever fully forgot. Dive shops set warnings, reminding visitors about shark safety. Families became more careful, knowing how quickly a fun day could turn tragic. Jason's loss changed the community forever. His memory became a lesson, teaching others about caution and respect for nature. Even though the ocean looked calm and safe, danger could always appear without warning beneath the surface. On August 5, 2024, the Lopez family arrived on the beautiful island of Maui, Hawaii, excited for their vacation. Carlos and Maria Lopez, in their mid-30s, had planned this trip carefully. They hoped to show their two young children, Sofia, 8, and Diego, 10, the wonders of the ocean. Carlos worked as a firefighter in Los Angeles, and Maria was a nurse. Both loved adventure and were strong swimmers. They wanted their children to share their passion for nature and water sports. This vacation was their first trip to Hawaii, and the family eagerly planned each day's activities. On their second day, the family decided to snorkel near Honolulu Bay, a popular and safe spot known for colorful fish and coral reefs. The ocean was calm and clear, perfect for beginners. Carlos and Maria helped their children wear life jackets and snorkel gear and taught them to breathe underwater through their masks. The water felt warm and gentle. Soon, the family floated peacefully above the reef, amazed by the brightly colored fish swimming beneath them. Sofia and Diego laughed, pointing excitedly at turtles and starfish. Carlos and Maria stayed close, enjoying seeing their children so happy. But their splashing and playful movements caught the attention of a large shadow lurking nearby. Below, a massive 14-foot tiger shark moved silently closer, drawn to the noise. Unaware of the danger beneath them, the family continued swimming peacefully, enjoying their experience. Suddenly, the calm water turned violent. Without warning, the huge tiger shark lunged upward, biting deeply into Maria's leg. Maria screamed in pain and fear as sharp teeth tore through her skin and muscles. Blood quickly filled the water around her. Carlos instantly saw the attack. Without thinking, he dove toward his injured wife, desperate to save her. He punched and kicked fiercely at the shark, trying to force it to let go. The shark, now enraged, released Maria's injured leg but quickly turned its attention to Carlos. It bit aggressively, tearing deeply into Carlos's side and causing severe wounds. Sofia and Diego screamed in panic, watching helplessly as their parents fought against the powerful predator. Ignoring her intense pain, Maria saw a spear floating nearby, dropped earlier by another snorkeler. Summoning all her strength, she reached for the spear, gripping it tightly. Despite her injuries, Maria thrust the spear at the shark, desperately trying to drive it away. Carlos struggled in pain, his wounds bleeding heavily into the water. The shark continued attacking aggressively, but Maria did not give up. Finally, after several determined strikes from Maria's spear, the shark swam away. The water around the family remained red from their injuries, and the children cried uncontrollably. Carlos and Maria, severely injured, struggled to stay afloat, holding on to each other and their children. They knew they needed help quickly or they might not survive. In moments, nearby swimmers rushed to their aid, pulling them carefully toward the shore. The peaceful vacation had suddenly become a desperate fight for survival. The lifeguards quickly carried Carlos and Maria onto the sand on the shore. Both had severe injuries from the shark's bites, Maria's leg deeply wounded and Carlos's side badly torn. The children cried nearby, frightened and unsure if their parents would survive. Paramedics rushed quickly onto the beach, carefully treating their wounds. Carlos and Maria were taken immediately to the nearest hospital. Doctors hurried to save their lives, working hard to repair the extensive damage caused by the shark's powerful jaws. Carlos had deep wounds on his side and chest, requiring immediate surgery. Maria's leg was badly injured, needing several hours of emergency care to stop heavy bleeding. Friends and family in Los Angeles received the shocking news and quickly flew to Hawaii to support the children. The Lopez family's terrifying encounter soon became national news. People across Hawaii and the United States felt shock and fear. Many questioned the safety of snorkeling and swimming near protected reefs. The attack raised concerns, as tiger shark attacks were rare, especially in calm, shallow waters. Marine experts studied the incident closely. They explained that tiger sharks were known to patrol near reefs, hunting fish and turtles. Experts believed the shark had mistaken Maria for prey, causing the unexpected and aggressive attack. Despite the explanations, tourists began avoiding snorkeling tours, afraid to enter previously safe waters. After weeks in the hospital, Carlos and Maria slowly recovered. Both survived their frightening encounter but were left with lasting scars. Maria's leg injury was severe, leaving her with a permanent limp and difficulty walking. Carlos faced months of therapy due to deep wounds on his torso. The emotional impact on the family was even greater. Returning home to Los Angeles, the family struggled to move forward. Carlos and Maria found themselves afraid of the ocean they once loved. Their children had nightmares, often waking in fear from dreams about sharks. The peaceful memories they hoped to create in Hawaii became a haunting reminder of their terrifying experience. To help cope, Maria began sharing their story publicly. She visited local schools, warning families about ocean safety and reminding children to stay alert when swimming. Carlos joined his wife, encouraging beach safety and awareness programs. Their experiences inspired the community. Soon, stronger safety rules were established along Hawaiian beaches. Lifeguards monitored waters more closely and provided clearer warnings about shark sightings. Snorkeling companies educated visitors carefully, hoping to prevent similar tragedies. Despite their fear, the family found strength in each other. They chose not to let the shark attack define their lives. Carlos and Maria focused on protecting others by sharing their experience and knowledge. Slowly, their children regained trust and comfort around water, though caution remained strong. Over time, the Lopez family healed, though never fully. The memories of that terrible afternoon remained clear. They learned to appreciate each day, grateful they survived the frightening attack. The shark changed their lives forever and gave them new strength to educate others. preventing future heartbreak for families enjoying the ocean. The morning of August 7th, 2023, was supposed to be another perfect fishing day for Ben Crawford and his longtime friend Tom Reeves. The two had been deep-sea fishing together for years, often venturing miles off the coast of Florida in search of big catches. That day, they had taken Ben's boat, the Marlin King, out to a well-known fishing spot about 15 miles from Key West. The area was famous for its deep waters, where anglers frequently caught tuna, marlin, and snapper. It was also a place where sharks were known to roam, especially tiger sharks, who often scouted fishing boats drawn by the scent of bait and fish remaining in the water. Ben and Tom set out early, loading their cooler with drinks and fishing gear, hoping for a good catch. By noon, they had already reeled in several large fish, their excitement growing with each successful catch. The sun was high in the sky and the ocean stretched endlessly around them, its surface shimmering in the heat. The two friends cast their lines, laughed, and exchanged stories as they worked. By mid-afternoon, their cooler was nearly full, and Ben decided to start gutting and cleaning some of their fish while Tom continued fishing. As Ben worked, he tossed the fish guts and remains overboard, unaware that the scent of blood was traveling fast through the water. Beneath the surface, a predator was already closing in. Focusing on his fishing rod, Tom suddenly noticed something unusual in the water. A large shadow moved beneath the boat, slow and deliberate. At first, he thought it might be a large fish, but as it came closer, he saw the unmistakable shape of a tiger shark. It was massive, at least 12 feet long, its dark stripes faintly visible beneath the surface. It moved with unsettling calmness, circling the boat as if assessing the situation. Still unaware of the shark, Ben stood near the boat's edge, wiping his hands on his shorts. He leaned over slightly to see if fish were gathering beneath the ship. He dipped his hand somewhat into the water for a second without realizing it. That was all it took. In a sudden violent burst, the tiger shark surged upward. Its massive jaws snapped shut around Ben's right arm, the force nearly pulling him off balance. A scream of pain tore through the air as the shark thrashed, dragging Ben toward the edge. Tom turned just in time to see the horrifying sight, his best friend locked in the jaws of one of the ocean's most dangerous predators. Tom lunged forward, grabbing Ben by his free arm, trying to pull him back. Blood sprayed across the deck as the shark bit down harder, its serrated teeth slicing through muscle and bone. Ben's face twisted in agony, his body jerking violently as the shark pulled him downward. Tom planted his feet and pulled with everything he had, his heart pounding in terror. For a brief moment, the shark let go, its powerful body twisting as it adjusted its grip. Ben collapsed onto the deck, clutching the remains of his arm, now a mangled mess of torn flesh and exposed bone. Blood poured from the wound, staining the deck and dripping into the water, further fueling the predator's aggression. Tom scrambled to grab anything that could stop the bleeding. His hands were shaking as he pressed a towel against the wound, but the bleeding was too severe. Ben's eyes were wide with shock, his breathing rapid and uneven. Then, before either of them could react, the shark struck again. It launched partially out of the water, its jaws locked onto Ben's leg. With terrifying strength, it yanked him over the side of the boat and into the water. The last thing Tom saw was his best friend's horrified expression before he disappeared beneath the waves. Tom screamed, grabbing a gaff hook, desperately stabbing at the water, but it was useless. The water churned violently, turning red as the shark thrashed with its prey. Tom could only watch in helpless terror for what felt like an eternity. Then the thrashing stopped. The ocean grew still except for the ripples left behind. There was no sign of Ben, no movement, no struggle. Only blood spread across the surface, a stark reminder of what had just happened. Tom collapsed onto the deck, his body shaking uncontrollably. His mind refused to process what he had just witnessed. One moment, Ben was laughing, cleaning fish, and enjoying the day. The next, he had been ripped from the boat, taken by the very ocean they had both loved. With trembling hands, Tom reached for the boat's radio, his voice barely stable as he called for help. The Coast Guard responded immediately, instructing him to stay where he was. Tom sat there, staring at the blood-stained water, unable to do anything but wait. When the Coast Guard arrived, they searched for Ben's body, but there was nothing left to recover. The tiger shark had taken everything. The attack sent shockwaves through the local fishing community. Many fishermen knew the risks of attracting sharks, but no one had expected something so brutal. Experts later speculated that the scent of the fish had drawn in the shark remains, mistaking Ben's hand for an easy meal. Once the initial bite happened, the predator had entered full attack mode, its instincts overriding any chance of survival for Ben. Tom never went fishing again. The boat was sold, and the waters off the Florida coast, once a place of adventure, had become a reminder of the nightmare that had taken his best friend. On June 15, 2024, the Davis family was enjoying a perfect sunny afternoon aboard their small family boat off the coast of Monterey Bay, California. The gentle waves sparkled beneath the clear sky, and seabirds circled overhead. It was exactly the type of day the family loved spending together. 12-year-old Emily Davis was particularly excited. She had just finished 6th grade, earning a special award for her excellent grades. Emily loved animals, especially dolphins, and dreamed of becoming a marine biologist someday. Her room at home was filled with books about ocean creatures, colorful drawings, and models of dolphins and whales. Emily was bright, cheerful, and always curious about the sea. Emily's father, Mark Davis, 40, worked as an auto mechanic in Santa Cruz. He had taught Emily how to swim when she was 4. Mark loved the water, and the two often went snorkeling together. Her mother, Laura Davis, 38, was a nurse at a local hospital. Laura spent most of her free time gardening or reading books, but enjoyed their family weekend boat trips. Emily's younger brother, Ben, who was 9, liked watching dolphins and collecting shells. The family was close-knit, always looking forward to their weekend adventures. The boat was anchored about half a mile from shore. Emily sat at the boat's edge, letting her feet dangle into the cool water. She laughed as fish swam close, occasionally splashing her toes. Ben, sitting beside her, watched the ocean eagerly. Everything seemed calm until suddenly the water beneath them moved strangely. The fish quickly scattered, disappearing in an instant. Emily paused, confused by the sudden quietness of the ocean. Without any warning, a massive 17-foot great white shark surged upward, its jaws opening wide as it bit violently into Emily's leg, slicing deeply into her skin and muscle. Blood immediately stained the water as the powerful shark dragged her from the boat, pulling her under. Mark and Laura stood up quickly, their eyes wide with terror. Mark jumped into action without thinking. He grabbed a rope kept at the side of the boat and threw it desperately into the water near where Emily had vanished. Seconds passed like hours. Emily finally surfaced, gasping for air, thrashing weakly. Her leg was bleeding badly, torn and severely injured by the shark's powerful bite. She reached for the rope, her fingers gripping it tightly as Mark pulled with all his strength. The shark circled again, but Mark refused to let go. With a strong pull, he managed to lift Emily onto the deck. She lay on the boat, crying from pain, her leg seriously injured and covered in blood. The ocean was still, and no sign of the shark remained. Laura quickly began trying to stop the bleeding, wrapping her daughter's leg tightly with towels. Ben watched, frozen with shock, as Mark frantically radioed for help. The ocean turned from joy to terror and sadness in moments. Emily lay quietly, shaking from shock as her family desperately waited for rescue. The rescue boat arrived quickly, racing toward the Davis family's ship. Paramedics carefully lifted Emily onto their vessel, immediately treating her serious wounds. Emily's leg was badly damaged, torn deeply from the shark's powerful bite. She remained awake but weak, losing blood quickly. Mark and Laura held each other tightly, comforting Ben as they watched their daughter being treated. Their happy day had become a painful nightmare. Emily was rushed to a nearby hospital in Monterey, where doctors began immediate surgery. At the hospital, news spread quickly. Friends and neighbors gathered, hoping and praying for Emily's recovery. Doctors worked for hours, carefully repairing the damage caused by the shark. Emily survived, but the injury to her leg was severe. Surgeons told her parents that she would need many months of physical therapy before she could walk again. The attack shocked everyone along the California coast. The beaches nearby quickly posted new signs warning about sharks. Local officials spoke on television reminding people to be alert while enjoying the ocean. Shark experts explained that great white sharks often lived near the area, but attacks were still very rare. They believed the shark had mistaken Emily for a seal or other prey. After the accident, Emily spent weeks in the hospital. Her recovery was long, but her spirit remained strong. Her family stayed by her every day, helping her through tough times. Emily continued reading her marine biology books, determined to learn more about sharks and the ocean. Mark felt deeply affected by what had happened. He struggled with memories of that frightening moment. haunted by thoughts of almost losing Emily. Still, he felt grateful that his quick actions had saved her life. In the community, people became more cautious around the ocean. Schools began teaching special classes on shark safety, helping kids understand how to stay safe while swimming. The beaches near Monterey Bay increased safety patrols, adding boats and lifeguards to watch carefully for any signs of danger. Emily eventually returned home, slowly adjusting to life after the attack. She had to use crutches initially, but her determination inspired everyone around her. People who heard her story sent letters, cards, and gifts, offering support. Her courage strengthened her family and community, bringing everyone closer together. Months later, Emily stood proudly at the beach again. Though she no longer entered the water, she had become an advocate for shark safety, telling others about her experience and teaching them to respect and understand these powerful ocean creatures. Life had changed forever for the Davis family, but through the fear and pain, they found strength in each other. Emily's terrifying experience reminded everyone how quickly happiness could turn to tragedy, but it also showed how courage, love, and community support could help heal even the deepest wounds. The ocean continued to move gently, unchanged, but thanks to Emily's brave story, it was filled with caution and awareness. January 9, 2022. The ocean near Guadalupe Island, Mexico, was calm. A gentle breeze blew softly across the clear blue water. The island is famous for shark cage diving, attracting tourists worldwide who want to see great white sharks up close. Among those tourists was Eric Lawson, a 28-year-old schoolteacher from Austin, Texas. Eric had always loved adventure. He enjoyed hiking, skydiving, and exploring new places. Friends described him as friendly and fearless, who never backed down from exciting experiences. He had come to Mexico with his girlfriend, Sarah, and two close friends, hoping for an unforgettable vacation. Eric and his friends booked their dive trip months earlier, excited to see great white sharks safely from inside a metal cage. The diving company assured them it was safe, explaining that tourists worldwide visited without problems yearly. On the morning of their dive, the boat traveled several miles offshore to reach the best shark watching area. Eric laughed and joked with his friends, thrilled as he prepared for the dive. The crew carefully explained safety instructions, reminding everyone to remain calm inside the cage. Soon, Eric put on his diving gear and stepped into the metal cage. The cage slowly lowered into the ocean, gently rising bubbles around it. Eric felt his excitement grow as he waded beneath the waves, eager to spot his first shark. His friends watched from the boat, taking photos and smiling happily. A few moments later, the first shark appeared. It was enormous, nearly 17 feet long, swimming slowly nearby. Eric watched in awe, amazed by the shark's power and beauty. The shark circled quietly at first, calmly swimming around the cage without showing aggression. But suddenly, everything changed. The great white shark turned sharply and swam fast toward the cage without warning. Eric felt his heart race and suddenly felt nervous. The shark moved with incredible speed, heading straight for him. The cage shook violently as the massive shark rammed into it with great force. The impact was so powerful that the metal bars bent slightly, creating a small opening. Eric's eyes widened with fear. He had no time to move or think clearly. In an instant, the shark forced its huge body through the gap in the cage. Eric tried to back away, but the cage was too small, and the shark's powerful jaws closed tightly onto his leg, biting deeply into his flesh. Water filled with blood quickly, surrounding Eric as he struggled desperately. Above the surface, crew members saw the cage shaking violently. They immediately realized something was wrong. They rushed to raise the cage, pulling frantically at the ropes. Below, Eric fought hard, pushing against the shark. The predator thrashed wildly, shaking Eric like a toy, causing severe injuries to his leg. Eric reached out, hoping the cage would rise faster. But the shark was stronger, pulling Eric into the dark depths below. The cage rose quickly, breaking the water surface, but Eric was no longer inside. Everyone stared in horror, realizing Eric had disappeared beneath the waves. Crew members quickly began searching the water, desperate to find Eric. They shouted, scanning the waves. Eric's friends stood frozen in shock, unable to believe what had happened. Sarah began to cry softly, feeling helpless and terrified. Divers jumped into the ocean, looking frantically beneath the surface. Boats circled the area carefully, crews hoping for any sign of Eric. Minutes passed slowly, each one feeling longer than the last. But Eric was nowhere to be found. After nearly 2 hours, rescue divers discovered Eric's diving gear, damaged and floating alone. Eric's body was never found, lost forever in the deep ocean. Everyone realized sadly that Eric had died, dragged beneath the waves by the powerful shark. The tragic news spread quickly. Eric's family in Texas received the heartbreaking call, feeling their world collapse. His parents struggled to accept their son's sudden loss, grieving deeply for the adventurous and cheerful young man they loved so much. The diving company faced serious safety concerns. Authorities began investigating and demanding answers about how the cage failed. They studied the metal cage carefully, finding it had bent under the shark's powerful force, something no one thought possible. Soon, other tourists canceled their shark dives, feeling afraid after hearing Eric's story. Local businesses suffered as visitors avoided cage diving trips altogether. People around the world learned of the tragedy and were shocked that such an adventure could turn deadly so quickly. Marine experts explained how unusual it was for a shark to enter a cage. They believed the great white shark acted aggressively because it felt trapped and scared. Despite these explanations, fear grew, making tourists nervous about entering shark-filled waters. Eric's friends returned home, forever changed by what they had witnessed. Sarah especially felt deeply shaken, haunted by memories of Eric's final moments. She sought counseling, struggling with sadness and nightmares about sharks. Her love for adventure disappeared completely. Months passed, but Eric's tragic death was never forgotten. Safety rules changed, with diving companies using stronger cages and stricter guidelines to protect tourists. Eric's story became a powerful reminder of the dangers beneath the ocean's surface. Back home in Austin, Eric's family created a memorial in his honor. Friends and neighbors visited regularly, sharing stories of Eric's kindness, humor, and love for life. His parents hoped the memorial would remind others always to be careful, even when seeking excitement. Over time, tourists slowly returned to cage diving, though more cautiously. Eric's death shows clearly how unpredictable nature can be. Visitors to Guadalupe Island remembered Eric's story, treating sharks with more respect and caution. Although Eric is gone, his story helped make diving safer for others. People learned important lessons about respect, caution, and preparation. The ocean remained beautiful, but Eric's story taught everyone how quickly joy could become tragedy. He was remembered not just for his bravery, but also for the lasting impact he had on ocean safety, protecting others from facing the same terrifying end. The morning of February 4, 2025, began with the steady rhythm of the sea. The sun, still low on the horizon, cast a golden glow over the Atlantic, its surface smooth and undisturbed. A warm breeze carried the familiar scent of salt and fish through the small coastal village in Brazil, where fishermen prepared their boats for another day on the water. The Mariana, a sturdy but weathered vessel, was among the first to set sail, its crew eager to take advantage of the season's rich bounty. Carlos Ferreira stood at the bow, watching the shoreline fade as they moved farther into open water. He had been fishing these waters for as long as he could remember, just as his father and grandfather had before him. The sea was both his livelihood and his home, its moods as familiar to him as the changing winds. He knew its generosity, the days when nets came back heavy, the thrill of a good catch. But he also knew its dangers. Every fisherman did. The ocean was unpredictable, and those who failed to respect it never lasted long. By mid-morning, the crew settled into their work, casting and retrieving nets with the practiced ease of men who had done this 1,000 times before. The sun climbed higher, its warmth reflecting off the gentle waves. Beneath them, the water darkened, shifting from turquoise to an inky blue as the depth increased. The Mariana rocked with the current, its wooden hull groaning softly with each roll of the sea. It was just past midday when something changed. At first, it was barely noticeable, a shift in the water, a fleeting shadow beneath the surface. Large fish often passed below the boat, their movements sending ripples across the calm expanse. But this was different. The shadow moved with deliberate slowness, circling. Carlos felt it before he saw it, an instinctive prickle at the back of his neck. His hands paused on the net he was hauling, his gaze sweeping the water. Then, there it was. A massive shape gliding just beneath the surface, a flash of white against the blue depths. It vanished as quickly as it appeared. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had all seen it. The ocean was home to sharks, but something about this one set them on edge. Maybe it was the size, perhaps it was the way it moved, not aimless, but focused. Then, without warning, the attack came. The great white shark, a massive 16-foot force of raw muscle and hunger, struck the hull with terrifying power. The impact shuddered through the entire boat, knocking men off balance and making the wood groan under the strain. Carlos barely managed to steady himself, his fingers gripping the rail as the Mariana lurched sideways. Silence followed. The men barely had time to process what had happened before the second strike came, more violent than the first. This time, the force lifted the bow slightly before slamming it back down, loosening the fastenings that held the wooden planks together. A sickening crack echoed through the air as the hull splintered. Water rushed in. Panic surged through the crew. They scrambled to stabilize the boat, but the shark wasn't finished. With terrifying grace, it breached the surface, its massive head rising above the waves. Rows of serrated teeth gleamed for a fraction of a second before it crashed again, sending seawater surge over the deck. The Mariana groaned, its structure failing. Then the ocean swallowed them. Carlos barely had time to take a breath before he was pulled under. Cold water surged around him, disorienting and unforgiving. He kicked hard, fighting to reach the surface. His head broke through, gasping for air. Around him, his crewmates also surfaced, their eyes wide with fear. The boat was gone. The wreckage drifted around them, floating debris, snapped beams, tangled nets. And beneath them, the shark still lurked. Carlos saw it moving below, a shadow against the endless blue. It was swift, methodical, as though assessing its prey. The men clung to whatever they could, their breath coming in short, desperate bursts. But there was no safe place in the open ocean. Then, the shark turned toward him. He barely had time to react before it struck. The impact was like being hit by a freight train, the force nearly knocking the breath from his lungs. Then came the teeth. Pain erupted through his leg as the shark's jaws clamped down, its serrated teeth slicing through muscle and bone with effortless precision. Carlos barely registered the agony before he was dragged under. The water closed around him, thick and suffocating. As the shark pulled him deeper, he fought. Instinct took over, his body thrashing against the immense power of the predator. His hands clawed at the shark's rough skin, searching for a weak spot. His fingers found its eye, pressing, scraping. The shark twitched, its grip loosening just enough for him to kick free. With every ounce of strength he had left, Carlos surged upward. His lungs burned, his vision blurred, but he broke the surface, gasping for air. Blood clouded the water around him. His leg was a ruined mess of torn flesh, the pain radiating through every fiber of his being. The other men saw him, their faces stricken with horror. He reached for them, but before he could move, the shark came again. This time, there was no escape. The great white surged forward, its black eyes locked onto him. In a flash of movement, its jaws closed around his torso, the force crushing, final. Carlos was gone. The ocean turned red, streaks of blood drifting across the waves. The men could do nothing. They clung to the wreckage, shivering from fear and cold, their minds struggling to comprehend the horror they had just witnessed. Minutes passed. Carlos never resurfaced. The survivors drifted, battered and exhausted, until another fishing vessel spotted them. They were pulled aboard, their bodies stiff from shock and salt water. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. The weight of loss settled over them like a suffocating fog. Back in the village, word spread quickly. Carlos Ferreira had disappeared, taken by the sea he had called home his entire life. His body was never found. His absence left a hollow ache in the hearts of those who had known him. A reminder that the ocean, for all its beauty, was still ruled by merciless predators. The attack sent ripples of fear through the fishing community. Men who had spent their lives on these waters now hesitated before setting sail. The ocean had always been dangerous, but never like this. It had never been so deliberate and stretched endlessly in every direction, a vast and indifferent wilderness. The sun hung high over the Florida coast, its golden light shimmering on the rolling waves. Below the surface, the world was different. Silent, endless, and alive in a way few could ever truly understand. Marcus Wright knew this world well. At 36, he had spent years diving, pushing himself deeper into the unknown, drawn by the thrill of exploration and the quiet solitude beneath the waves. On May 5, 2024, he descended into the depths again, eager to explore an untouched section of reef far from the usual diving spots. The water was clear, visibility stretching for yards, revealing the vibrant blues and greens of the ocean floor. Schools of fish darted around him, their movements synchronized like a single living entity. Rays glided beneath him, their wings moving with slow, effortless grace. Marcus had always respected the ocean and its creatures. He understood that he was an outsider in their world. That respect kept him cautious, but it never stopped him from going deeper, pushing a little further. As he drifted, weightless, scanning the rocky formations below, something shifted in the water. A presence, a movement too large and deliberate to be mistaken for anything ordinary. At first it was just a shadow, something lurking at the edge of his vision. He turned slowly, his heart tightening. And then, it emerged. The enormous great white shark, nearly 18 feet of raw power and instinct, glided through the water with an eerie, effortless grace. Its streamlined form exuded quiet dominance, while its dark, inscrutable eyes revealed nothing. Its movement was not urgent, only a steady, deliberate presence as it carved through the ocean depths with unwavering purpose. Marcus stilled, keeping his movements controlled. He had encountered sharks before, smaller ones, reef sharks, even the occasional bull shark. But this was different. This was the ocean's apex predator, and it had interested him. The shark passed by once, twice, coming a little closer each time. Marcus knew he had to stay calm. Any sudden movement could trigger its predatory instincts. Slowly, he adjusted his position, trying to inch toward the surface without drawing too much attention. But the shark wasn't leaving. It began circling him, its movements shifting from passive curiosity to something more focused. The space between them shrank. It turned sharply, cutting through the water with terrifying precision. Marcus felt his breath quicken, his body tightening with adrenaline. He needed to get back to the boat. Now the problem was distance. His boat was anchored far enough that reaching it would take time, and every movement risked drawing the shark closer. He could already see its patterns changing. What had been lazy circling was now more aggressive, more direct. He started swimming. At first he moved slowly, keeping his strokes smooth and controlled. But the shark reacted instantly, shifting its course, moving with him. The gap between them narrowed. A flash of movement, then impact. The force hit like a sledgehammer. The shark struck from below, knocking him sideways, sending a jolt of pain through his body. His leg burned as rows of serrated teeth raked across his thigh, tearing through his wetsuit. Blood bloomed in the water, swirling in a dark cloud around him. Panic clawed at his mind, but he shoved it down. He had to move. He kicked hard, fighting the throbbing pain and pushing forward. The boat was still too far away. The shark turned again, faster this time. It wasn't finished. Marcus could see the power in its movements and the deadly precision with which it adjusted course, setting up for another attack. He braced himself, knowing he could not escape outright. He had to fight. The second hit was worse. The shark came from the side, its jaws snapping shut around his arm. The pain was instant, searing as the teeth tore through flesh. He jerked back instinctively, ripping himself free before the jaws could clamp down completely. Blood poured from the wound, mingling with the salt water, staining his vision red. Everything became about survival. The surface seemed impossibly far away, the boat still out of reach. His muscles screamed for air, but he forced himself forward. The shark circled once more, but something had changed. The blood in the water, the resistance. It had hesitated. Maybe it was confusion, a brief shift in instinct, but it didn't charge again. Not yet. Marcus seized the opportunity, kicking with every last ounce of strength, reaching the surface in desperate, ragged strokes. The moment his head broke free, he gasped for air, lungs burning. The boat was still yards away. He couldn't stop. Every movement was agony. His leg was weak, barely responsive. His arm throbbed and his vision blurred from the blood loss. But he kept going, forcing himself forward, each stroke feeling slower than the last. When he reached the boat, he barely could pull himself up. His fingers fumbled for the ladder, slipping, shaking. He used every remaining energy to haul himself onto the deck, collapsing onto the hard surface. The world spun his heartbeat, a deafening drum in his ears. The shark remained below, its dark shape still momentarily visible before fading into the depths. He lay there gasping, his body trembling from the shock, from the pain. Blood pooled beneath him, the wounds deep, raw, but survivable. He was alive. Rescue came fast, though the minutes felt stretched into eternity. The bleeding was severe, his leg and arm torn open, his body on the edge of collapse. But as they lifted him to safety, as he was rushed toward the help he desperately needed, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. The ocean had changed him. The scars would remain, etched into his skin. a permanent reminder of the brutal primal force he had faced. But more than that, the experience had shifted something inside him. He had always respected the ocean, but now he understood it like never before. It was beautiful, yes, but it was also merciless. There was no hatred in what had happened, no malice in the shark's attack. It had simply followed instinct, just as it had done for millions of years. The ocean had always belonged to the creatures that ruled its depths, and Marcus had simply been a visitor. August 3, 2024. The beach stretched along the Queensland coast in golden arcs, its sand soft and warm under the sun. The air was thick with the mingling scents of salt and sunscreen, and the rhythmic crash of waves set the tempo for the lively scene unfolding along the shore. Families lounged beneath a patchwork of colorful umbrellas, their laughter rising above the calls of street vendors selling cold drinks and ice cream. Children darted back and forth along the water's edge, their footprints briefly marking the sand before the tide claimed them. Beyond the shoreline, the ocean was alive with movement. Surfers carved along the rolling swells, their bodies balanced with effortless grace. Further out, swimmers bobbed in the deeper waters, their heads breaking the surface before disappearing beneath again. Lily Adams had been waiting for this trip for months. At 12, she adored the ocean, how it smelled and felt when it wrapped around her body and seemed endless and mysterious. She and her younger brother, Jack, had spent the morning building sandcastles, their fingers coated in damp sand as they shaped towering turrets and deep moats. They had raced along the shoreline, challenging the waves to chase them back to dry land, shrieking each time the cool water licked at their heels. By midday, the sun had climbed high, its heat pressing relentlessly. The ocean, a shimmering expanse of blue and green, was irresistible. Lily stood ankle-deep, feeling the gentle tug of the tide, the wet sand shifting beneath her feet. Jack splashed beside her, his face lit with excitement. But beneath the surface, unseen and unknown to the laughing beachgoers, something moved. A bull shark had been lurking in the deeper channels offshore where the sand mixed with silt, turning the water murky green. At nearly 14 feet long, it was a creature built for power. Its muscular body sliced through the currents with silent efficiency. Its small black eyes scanned its surroundings, responding to instincts honed over millions of years. It had not come seeking humans. It was drawn by the erratic vibrations of movement, the frantic kicks, the splashing limbs. To the shark, these were the unmistakable signals of prey. It turned, angling toward the shallows. Lily and Jack continued playing, oblivious to the predator drifting closer. The ocean, moments ago a playground, would soon become something else entirely. There was no warning, no shadow, no ripple, no telltale dorsal fin. 1 second, Lily stood waist-deep laughing, and the world exploded the next. A force like nothing she had ever felt slammed into her from below, knocking the breath from her lungs. The water erupted in a burst of foam and thrashing limbs. A terrible pressure clamped down around her thigh, a crushing, searing pain, unlike anything she had ever known. Jack screamed. On the shore, heads turned at the sound, conversations faltered, and laughter faded. A mother shading her eyes saw the disturbance in the water and gasped. A lifeguard perched on his high chair, bolted upright, his whistle dropping from his lips. Lily barely registered any of it. She was beneath the surface now, yanked downward with terrifying force. Salt water flooded her mouth, her body twisting violently as the shark shook its massive head, trying to tear away flesh. Every nerve in her body screamed in agony. The shark released her for a split second, and she felt herself spinning toward the surface, arms flailing. Light burst above her, so close, just within reach. But before she could break free, it struck again. The second bite was worse than the first. Teeth as sharp as razors sank into her side, slicing through flesh and cracking bone. She could no longer scream. Her vision blurred, her thoughts unraveling. The water around her, once clear, darkened with something warm, something red. On the shore, chaos erupted. Parents clutched their children, dragging them from the surf. The lifeguards sprinted toward the water, radios crackling as they called for backup. Whistles blew, shouts rang out, but for Lily, it was already too late. The ocean swallowed her whole. The rescue operation began immediately. Lifeguards launched jet skis into the waves, their eyes scanning for any sign of movement. Helicopters circled overhead, their blades slicing through the heavy afternoon air. Boats crisscrossed the water, divers plunging beneath the surface, searching desperately. But there was nothing. The beach, which had been filled with joy just an hour before, stood in stunned silence. Strangers held one another, and parents clutched their children tighter, whispering reassurances they weren't sure they believed. Lily's parents stood frozen at the water's edge, their faces pale and stricken. Her mother's hands trembled violently, and her mouth moved without sound. Her father took a halting step forward, his gaze fixed on the horizon as if willing his daughter to reappear. But the ocean gave nothing back. Minutes became hours. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the sand. The search continued, but hope faded with the light. Eventually, the rescue teams began to pack up, their faces etched with grim acceptance. She was gone. The news spread quickly, and by morning, headlines screamed of the tragedy. Experts debated the reasons. Was it a case of mistaken identity? An effect of rising ocean temperatures? A consequence of overfishing pushing sharks closer to shore? For Lily's family, none of it mattered. Statistics and theories would not bring her back. Her bedroom remained untouched, her belongings exactly as she had left them. Her parents moved through the days in a fog, their home heavy with silence. Jack, once so full of energy, barely spoke. The ocean had always been Lily's favorite place. Now it was the thing that had taken her away. Despite the shock and grief, the tide continued to roll in. The sun still rose, casting golden light over the waves that had hidden her final moments. Eventually, the beach filled with people again, children laughing, families playing, and surfers chasing the perfect swell. Life moved forward, as it always did. And somewhere, in the deep, the predator that had changed everything continued to move unseen, untouched by human grief. The morning of March 18, 2013, started like any other for Dave Williams and his 17-year-old son, Alex Williams. The two had traveled to Gans Bay, South Africa, known as one of the best places in the world for shark diving. It was a trip they had planned for months, one final adventure together before Alex left for university. Dave, a seasoned diver with over 20 years of experience, had introduced his son to the sport when he was a child. Alex had only recently earned his diving certification and was eager to prove himself in open waters. The boat, the Ocean Spirit, left the harbor early in the morning, carrying a small group of divers, including Dave, Alex, their guide, Martin Harris, and 3 other experienced divers. The weather was clear and the waters were calm, perfect conditions for the dive. The location they were heading to, known as Shark Alley, was famous for its dense population of great white sharks, which often lurked near the area's seal colonies. Many divers came here to see the legendary predators up close, either in cages or through free dives. Dave had done both and was comfortable in the water. Alex, though confident, had never encountered a shark in the wild before. As the boat reached the dive site, Martin gave the briefing. He reminded everyone to stay close to their dive buddy, remain calm if they encountered a shark, and avoid making sudden movements. The goal was to explore the reef below while watching for the majestic creatures that patrolled the deep. Dave and Alex double-checked their gear, exchanged a silent nod, and followed the group into the water. The descent was smooth, the water crystal clear. Schools of fish darted past them, weaving through the coral-covered rocks below. Alex stayed close to his father, his breathing controlled, his excitement barely contained. For the first 15 minutes, everything was peaceful. They moved through the reef, watching small marine creatures move in and out of hiding spots. Then Dave noticed a shift in the water. The smaller fish had vanished, a sign that something larger was nearby. Turning slightly, Dave saw a massive great white shark, at least 16 feet long, moving silently beyond the visibility line. It was watching them. Dave knew enough about sharks to understand their behavior. The shark wasn't attacking, it was investigating. He signaled to Alex, telling him to stay still and remain calm. Alex saw the shark now too, his body tensing. It was his first close encounter with such a powerful predator. For a moment, nothing happened. The shark circled at a distance, uninterested in the divers. The group remained still, watching carefully, but then something changed. The shark's posture shifted. It moved more urgently, its eyes locked onto the two of them. Dave tightened his grip on his spear gun just in case. Alex, still motionless, breathed steadily, waiting for his father's cue. Without warning, the great white turned sharply and charged. It moved with terrifying speed, closing the distance between them in seconds. Dave pushed Alex back instinctively, but the shark was already upon them. Its massive jaws opened wide, clamping onto Alex's leg. The force sent a cloud of blood into the water. Alex let out a muffled scream through his regulator as the shark shook him violently. Dave reacted instantly. His training kicked in, and without hesitation he aimed his spear gun and fired directly at the shark's side. The spear struck, but it barely made an impact. The shark was relentless, dragging Alex downward, his body jerking as he struggled to break free. Desperate, Dave abandoned his gear and lunged toward the predator, punching at its snout, trying to force it to let go. Alex's blood mixed into the water, attracting more movement in the distance. Martin, still nearby, saw the chaos unfold and rushed toward them, signaling the other divers to ascend. He reached Dave just as the shark released Alex for a brief second. Dave grabbed his son, trying to pull him upward, but the shark wasn't finished. It lunged again, this time straight at Dave. Its massive jaws clamped onto his chest, tearing through his wetsuit. The force knocked the air from his lungs, and within moments, blood poured from his body. Martin had no choice. He tried to pull Alex away, but the younger diver was already going into shock. The shark dragged Dave down deeper, thrashing its powerful body as it ripped through him. His last conscious moments were spent reaching toward his son, trying to save him, but it was too late. Alex, still bleeding heavily, struggled in Martin's grip, his body weak. The second shark appeared then, drawn by the scent of blood. It struck Alex next, its razor-sharp teeth cutting into his side. Martin screamed through his regulator, hitting the shark with a dive knife, but it didn't matter. Within seconds, Alex was gone too, disappearing into the dark water as the sharks ripped into him. Martin, his heart pounding, kicked upward as fast as he could, breaking the surface and gasping for air. The other divers were already on the boat, waving frantically. The crew pulled him aboard, and his hands shook uncontrollably as he ripped off his mask. Below, the water churned with movement, the last traces of red fading into the depths. The boat captain immediately called for emergency response, but they could do nothing. The ocean had taken them. News of the attack spread quickly, shaking the diving community to its core. Dave Williams was a respected diver. His experience was unmatched, and his love for the ocean was evident in everything he did. His son Alex was full of promise and eager to follow in his father's footsteps. They had entered the water together, a father guiding his son, but neither had made it back. The incident left many questioning the risks of diving in known shark territories. Some believed that baiting in the area had altered shark behavior, making them more aggressive toward humans. Others argued that the great whites had been hunting, acting on instinct. But it wasn't just an attack for those who had been there that day. It was a fight, a father's desperate attempt to save his son, to do whatever it took to bring him home. He had died trying, refusing to leave his boy alone in the darkness. The ocean had given Dave and Alex their greatest adventures, and in the end, it had taken them both. The morning sun had risen high over the waters off the coast of Gansby, South Africa. It was December 12th, 2020, a warm summer day in the southern hemisphere, and the ocean stretched endlessly in all directions. The region was well known for its dense population of great white sharks, attracting thrill-seekers and marine researchers alike. The waves moved gently beneath the luxury yacht owned by Peter Hallstrom, a 34-year-old entrepreneur who had spent the last several years chasing adrenaline-fueled experiences. Peter had invited 3 of his closest friends, Daniel Foster, Marcus Klein, and Jason Reynolds, to join him for a week-long cruise. The trip had been planned as an escape from the pressures of their busy lives. They had spent the past few days deep-sea fishing, drinking expensive champagne, and swimming in the open waters. The yacht, staffed with a full crew, offered everything they needed. A private chef prepared meals, drinks flowed freely, and every moment was spent indulging in the finest luxuries. After a late breakfast on the deck that morning, Peter stood near the railing, gazing at the horizon. The yacht's captain, Richard Voss, had mentioned earlier that sharks were common in the area, often drawn to fishing boats discarding scraps. The idea excited Peter, who had always been fascinated by sharks. He had seen them on nature documentaries and even considered going cage diving. But today, he wanted to see one up close without a cage separating them. A few crew members had just finished cleaning the fish caught the day before, leaving behind a bucket filled with scraps. Peter walked over and lifted it, curiosity filling his mind. He carried the bucket to the edge of the yacht and tipped a handful of fish guts into the water. His friends, initially distracted by their drinks, turned to watch. The scent of blood spread quickly through the water, drifting beneath the surface. Minutes passed in silence. Then, a shadow moved below the yacht. A bronze whaler shark appeared first, gliding through the water. It circled once before disappearing. Then a much larger presence stirred below. A great white shark, unmistakable in size and movement, had arrived. Peter's excitement grew as he reached for more scraps, tossing them overboard. The shark swam closer, its massive body moving effortlessly through the water. The others watched as the predator glided beneath the surface, its dorsal fin cutting through the waves. Encouraged by the response, Peter wanted to bring it even closer. He grabbed a large chunk of meat from the bucket, holding it over the water. The shark turned, its dark eyes locked onto the bait. Peter leaned forward, stretching his arm out to get a better look. The shark swam toward the meat, its movement smooth and deliberate. But as it lunged, it did not go for the bait. It instantly changed direction, its jaws snapping shut on Peter's arm. A sharp, searing pain shot through his body as he screamed. The shark's teeth sliced deep into his flesh, the pressure crushing the bones in his forearm. Blood poured into the water, spreading in a cloud around the thrashing animal. The impact sent Peter forward, nearly pulling him overboard. His friends reacted instantly, grabbing his body and pulling him back onto the deck. Having felt resistance, the shark released him almost immediately and disappeared beneath the surface. Peter collapsed onto the deck, gripping his arm. Blood soaked his shirt, pooling beneath him as the crew scrambled into action. The yacht's medic rushed forward, pressing a towel against the wound to slow the bleeding. Peter's face had turned pale, his body trembling from shock. His friends stood over him, frozen, unable to process what had happened. The yacht's captain contacted the nearest coastal authorities for emergency medical assistance. The yacht began moving toward shore at full speed, cutting through the waves as fast as the engines could. Crew members secured Peter's arm, wrapping it tightly to control the bleeding. Every second felt longer than the last. By the time they reached the harbor, an ambulance was already waiting. Paramedics lifted Peter onto a stretcher, rushing him toward the hospital. His pulse was weak, his breathing uneven. His friends followed closely behind, their once carefree vacation now overshadowed by the horrifying encounter. Doctors worked quickly to assess the damage. The shark's bite had caused severe lacerations, tearing through muscle and nerve tissue. Though the bones had not been completely shattered, reconstructive surgery would be necessary. Peter was stabilized and prepped for emergency treatment. Hours later, he awoke to find his arm heavily bandaged, the pain radiating through his body. The news of the attack spread quickly. Reports surfaced online about a luxury yacht excursion gone wrong, with photos of the blood-stained deck circulating on social media. Marine experts weighed in, explaining that sharks were naturally drawn to the scent of food in the water. Some speculated that the sudden movement of Peter's arm had triggered the shark's instinctive response. In the days that followed, Peter reflected on the incident. He had spent years chasing adrenaline, pushing limits without considering the risks. Now, with his arm permanently scarred, he understood the consequences of his actions. His fascination with sharks remained, but it had been replaced by something else: respect. The yacht remained docked for the rest of the trip. The crew, shaken by the attack, refused to allow any more reckless behavior. Peter's friends, once eager for excitement, found themselves unwilling to return to the water. The moment had changed them all. A few days later, Peter walked out of the hospital, his arm still wrapped in thick bandages, a dull ache serving as a constant reminder of what he had been through. The deep scars would remain etched into his skin, a permanent mark of that fateful encounter, a lesson he would carry for the rest of his life. He had set out with a dream, eager to see a great white shark up close, and he had gotten his wish in the most harrowing way imaginable. The experience had changed him, leaving behind more than just wounds. He would never forget the moment he locked eyes with the predator, the raw power, the sheer force of nature. It was a memory that would live with him forever, a tale of fascination and survival. On June 12, 2023, the sun shone brightly over Cocoa Beach, Florida. It was a perfect summer day with gentle waves washing onto the shore. Families gathered, enjoying the soft sand and clear, shallow water. Laughter filled the air as children played near the shoreline, chasing beach balls and splashing happily. Among the crowd was Ryan Mitchell, a cheerful 16-year-old from Orlando, Florida. Ryan loved sports and spent most of his free time outdoors. At school, he was known as a talented soccer player, always smiling and making friends easily. His family often visited Cocoa Beach, enjoying relaxing weekends by the ocean. Ryan was at the beach with his parents and younger sister, Emily. They had arrived early, setting up their towels and umbrellas near the water. Ryan quickly joined other teenagers in a friendly beach game, tossing a colorful beach ball back and forth. The game moved closer to the shoreline, where the water was only waist deep. Ryan laughed as the ball bounced away, landing a short distance ahead. He chased after it, running into the shallow water. He didn't notice anything unusual, just the clear ocean shimmering in the sunlight. But beneath the peaceful waves, danger was approaching fast. Suddenly, the calm day turned terrifying. A large 7-foot bull shark appeared from beneath, lunging toward Ryan with surprising speed. Its powerful jaws closed tightly around his leg, biting deeply into his flesh. Ryan screamed in pain, losing his balance and falling into the water. People on the shore heard Ryan's cries, turning quickly to see what had happened. Parents stood frozen in shock, watching helplessly as the attack unfolded. Ryan's mother screamed, running toward the water. The shark thrashed violently, pulling Ryan deeper beneath the waves. Blood filled the water, quickly spreading around him. Ryan fought desperately, punching and kicking the shark with all his strength. His struggles finally caused the shark to loosen its grip, and Ryan broke free. He rose to the surface, gasping for air, weak from the attack. Nearby swimmers rushed to help him, grabbing his arms and pulling him toward the safety of the shore. Ryan's body trembled from shock and fear as he was carried quickly out of the bloody water. Once safely on land, Ryan's severe injuries were clear. His leg was badly torn, deep wounds visible as blood soaked the sand around him. People quickly wrapped his wounds, calling urgently for help. Ryan's family surrounded him, their faces pale with panic and fear. Emergency vehicles raced to the beach, sirens loud and lights flashing brightly. Paramedics lifted Ryan carefully onto a stretcher, working quickly to control the bleeding. His family watched helplessly, unsure if their son would survive. As Ryan was rushed to the hospital, beachgoers stared at the quiet ocean. The peaceful summer day had become a nightmare. The shallow waters, once a place of joy, were filled with fear and uncertainty. Ryan's fight for life had just begun, and everyone waited anxiously to learn if he would survive. Doctors hurried to help him at the hospital, knowing every second mattered. His leg was badly injured, with deep bite marks and torn muscles. Nurses carefully cleaned his wounds while doctors worked to stop the bleeding. Outside the operating room, Ryan's family waited nervously. His mother and father held hands tightly, afraid of losing their son. Hours passed slowly as doctors performed surgery, trying their best to repair the damage. Friends and neighbors arrived at the hospital, offering comfort and support. Finally, the doctors came to speak with Ryan's parents. They explained that Ryan had survived, but the attack had caused serious injuries. He would need months of therapy and multiple surgeries to regain full use of his leg. The family felt relief knowing Ryan was alive, even as they understood the difficult journey ahead. News of Ryan's attack quickly spread through Cocoa Beach and nearby towns. Local families felt scared, wondering if the shallow waters were safe. Parents worried about their children playing near the shoreline. People began avoiding the beach, fearful of another attack. Marine experts spoke publicly, explaining that bull sharks often swim near shore. They warned swimmers to be careful and watchful, especially near the shore. Soon after, lifeguards at Cocoa Beach put up new signs, clearly warning visitors about the possible dangers in shallow water. At home, Ryan slowly began recovering. His leg healed very slowly and walking was difficult. Friends from school visited often, cheering him up and keeping him company. But emotionally, Ryan struggled greatly. He had nightmares about sharks, frequently waking up frightened and unable to sleep again. His love for sports faded, replaced by anxiety and fear. The ocean, once a place he loved, now terrified him. He refused to return to the beach, unable even to look at pictures of water without feeling sick. Ryan's wounds healed physically as months passed, but the emotional scars stayed deep. His parents arranged for him to see a counselor, hoping it would help him deal with his fears. Slowly, talking about the attack made Ryan feel stronger. He began understanding what happened and learned ways to cope with his memories. Over time, Ryan grew braver. He shared his story at local schools, warning other children to stay alert at the beach. He helped the community understand the importance of ocean safety. People admired his strength and courage, inspired by his ability to recover after such a frightening event. The community around Cocoa Beach became more cautious but also more informed. Families listened closely to safety warnings and were careful when swimming in shallow waters. Ryan's story reminded everyone of the hidden dangers of the sea, teaching everyone to respect the ocean. Ryan never fully returned to his old self, forever changed by the shark attack. Though his leg healed, the fear of the ocean stayed with him. Yet, through sharing his experience, he found a new purpose. His painful story helped protect others, turning a terrifying day into a meaningful lesson for an entire community. September 3, 2015, a group of divers set out from Gansby, South Africa, known for its dense population of great white sharks, and the day had started like any other at sea. The weather and water conditions were clear, and the team was excited for another deep dive into shark territory. Among them was 38-year-old Tom Mitchell, an experienced diver with years of open water exploration. He had traveled the world studying marine life, but South Africa's waters had always been his favorite. This time he was joining a team that included his longtime dive partner, Eric Dawson, along with 3 other divers: Mark Lewis, a marine photographer, Victor Rains, a professional guide, and Anna Carter, an adventure enthusiast who had spent months training for this dive. The group planned to explore a site roughly 6 miles off the coast known as Shark Alley. The region was famous for its high population of great white sharks drawn in by large seal colonies. Researchers often studied their behavior in these waters, and it had become a hot spot for both thrill seekers and conservationists. The team was well prepared, using a certified cage diving vessel operated by Captain Henry Collins, an experienced boat operator who had spent most of his life on these waters. The plan was simple: descend to about 60 feet, observe the sharks from a safe distance, document their behavior, and return to the boat in an organized ascent. By midday, the group suited up and began their descent. The water was cold but clear enough to see at least 30 feet ahead. The first few minutes were peaceful. A few smaller fish darted through the reefs below, and the divers kept close together, their flashlights illuminating the deep blue around them. Tom felt at ease, scanning the ocean floor for any movement. 15 minutes in, the first great white appeared. It was massive, easily 15 feet long, gliding through the water just beyond their reach. The group watched in admiration as it moved effortlessly through the currents. A second one appeared not long after, circling in the opposite direction. Tom signaled to Eric, who acknowledged the presence of the sharks but remained calm. Encounters like this weren't unusual. Great whites were naturally curious but rarely aggressive without provocation. Then a third shark appeared. It was even larger, possibly 18 feet long, and its massive body cut through the water as it circled slowly. Unlike the others, this one seemed more deliberate in its approach and calculated in its movements. The divers remained still, following proper protocol. No sudden movements, no erratic gestures. The sharks simply observed them briefly, as if assessing their presence. But something changed. The largest shark moved in closer, and the others followed its lead. The usual curiosity turned into something else, something more aggressive. Tom's breathing grew heavier, his instincts telling him something wasn't right. Sharks rarely attacked without reason, but he knew that changes in behavior could signal danger. The first strike was sudden. The largest shark lunged forward, clamping onto Tom's right leg with terrifying force. The impact was brutal, sending a shockwave of pain through his body. Blood filled the water instantly, spreading like a cloud around them. Eric, just a few feet away, watched in horror as Tom thrashed, struggling to break free. The second shark struck next. As Tom fought to push the first shark away, another came from the side, biting down on his left arm and tearing through his wetsuit. His regulator muffled his screams, but the agony was clear. Eric and Victor tried to intervene, striking at the sharks with their dive knives, but the predators were relentless. The final blow came when the third shark lunged from below, biting into Tom's torso. Within seconds, Tom was being pulled in 3 different directions. The sharks tore into him with horrifying precision, their teeth shredding through flesh and bone. His body twisted unnaturally as they ripped him apart, the water turning into a frenzy of movement. His dive mask slipped off, his oxygen tank dislodging as his body was torn between the three massive predators. Eric, frozen in shock, could do nothing but watch. He had seen sharks attack before, but never like this. It wasn't a single bite, a moment of curiosity gone wrong, a full-blown feeding frenzy. The other divers, paralyzed by fear, could only back away, their instincts screaming at them to escape. Victor signaled for an emergency ascent, knowing there was nothing more they could do. They could still see the chaos below as they rose toward the surface. The sharks continued their attack, thrashing violently as they consumed what remained of Tom. By the time the diver broke the surface, gasping for air, there was nothing left of him, only blood spreading in every direction. Captain Henry had already noticed the disturbance from the boat. When he saw the divers break the surface, he knew something had gone wrong. He and his crew hauled them aboard, their faces pale, their bodies trembling. Eric collapsed onto the deck, ripping off his gear, his hands shaking uncontrollably. The crew scrambled to scan the water, hoping to see Tom. But there was nothing. Body, equipment, and nothing to recover. The incident sent shockwaves through the diving community. Experts later speculated that the shark's behavior had been triggered by baiting activity in the area. Tour operators often lure sharks closer to boats using chum, and the lingering scent of blood may have triggered an aggressive response. Others believe the sharks were already in a heightened state of predation when the divers entered the water. Whatever the cause, Tom Mitchell's death stood as one of the most horrifying shark attacks ever recorded. His name was etched into the memories of those who had witnessed it. His final moments a brutal reminder of the ocean's unforgiving nature. The morning of July 18, 2024, started as any other for Bethany Beth Caldwell, a 31-year-old swimmer who had spent years training in open water. Living near Cape Cod, Massachusetts, she was no stranger to the ocean's beauty and dangers. She had grown up swimming competitively and later transitioned into endurance training, often pushing herself farther into the Atlantic than most would dare. The waters off Cape Cod were known for their great white shark population, especially in the summer when seals were plentiful. But Beth never let that stop her. That morning she arrived at Nauset Beach before sunrise, the sand still cool beneath her feet. It was a routine she had followed for years. The early morning calm, with few people around, made it the perfect time to swim. The ocean, though unpredictable, felt like home to her. She stretched briefly before adjusting her swim cap and goggles. Her friend and occasional training partner, Daniel Hayes, was supposed to join her, but he had messaged earlier that he wasn't feeling well. That left Beth alone, but she was used to solitude in the water. She waded in, feeling the familiar chill of the Atlantic rush over her skin. The water was calm, with only gentle waves lapping at the shore. She began her swim, and her strokes were smooth and rhythmic. Her breathing was controlled, and her focus was on distance rather than speed. She aimed to push herself farther than usual, beyond the shallows where most casual swimmers stayed. She had done similar swims before, but the air felt different today. Cape Cod has long been a hotspot for great white sharks, drawn by the large seal population. Researchers have documented increased shark activity over the years, and swimmers are always advised to stay close to shore. Signs warning of sharks are posted along the beaches, but Beth has never encountered one in all her years of swimming. She has read stories and seen footage of sharks patrolling the waters, but they have remained distant. She paused as she reached nearly a mile offshore, treading water to check her surroundings. The coastline was still visible, but the beachgoers were distant figures, unaware of how far she had gone. She took a deep breath and turned to continue, but something caught her eye. Below her, a shadow moved. It was slow, deliberate. At first she thought it was a large fish, but then she saw the unmistakable outline of a dorsal fin. Her heart pounded as she realized what it was. A great white shark, easily over 10 feet long. It had appeared silently, its movement calculated, gliding just beneath her. Her instincts told her to remain still, not to thrash or panic. She floated, her mind racing, trying to recall everything she had ever learned about shark behavior. The shark circled once, then moved away, disappearing into the depths. Beth exhaled, relief washing over her. Maybe it had been curious and decided she wasn't food. For a moment she thought she was safe. She turned toward shore, swimming steadily and controlling her movements. Every few strokes, she glanced over her shoulder, scanning the water. The shadow was gone, and she forced herself to stay calm. She was still nearly a mile from shore, and panic would drain her energy faster. Then a sudden surge in the water behind her sent a shockwave of fear through her body. The shark had returned. It was closer, moving faster this time. Before she could react, a force slammed into her side, knocking the breath from her lungs. Pain exploded through her right leg as teeth clamped down just above her knee. She barely registered the shock before the shark thrashed, pulling her under. Her vision blurred as salt water filled her nose and mouth. Instinct took over, and she kicked with her free leg, desperate to break free. The shark released her suddenly, startled by her resistance or momentarily distracted. She surged to the surface, gasping for air, her heart pounding wildly. Blood clouded the water around her, a deep red spreading through the blue. The pain in her leg was unbearable, but she forced herself to move. The shoreline looked impossibly far, but she had no choice but to swim. She knew she was bleeding heavily, and the fear of attracting more sharks only added to her desperation. She pushed forward using mostly her arms, her injured leg barely able to function. Every stroke felt slower, her strength draining with each passing second. She tried to focus on reaching the shore, but exhaustion pressed down on her. Then another movement below. The shark wasn't finished. It circled again, drawn back by the scent of blood in the water. She felt the current shift as it moved closer. Her body screamed to go faster, but she could barely keep herself afloat. A sharp pull on her left leg sent her underwater again. The shark had latched on, its jaws crushing down with brutal force. A violent shake sent fresh agony through her body. Darkness crept into the edges of her vision. She tried to fight, to resist, but her body was giving out. She surfaced one last time, gasping, her arms flailing weakly. The beach was still so far away. The people there had no idea what was happening, how close she was to being lost. She tried to call for help, but no sound came. The world tilted as her strength failed. Her body sank, the water closing over her. The ocean had claimed her. The shark, satisfied or simply following instinct, let go, leaving only silence in its wake. The waves carried her motionless body toward shore. But by the time she was found, nothing was left to save. Beth had always believed she understood the ocean, but on that day, it had reminded her of something brutal. Once it decides to take you, there is no escape. May 10th, 2023. The waters near Fort Lauderdale, Florida, sparkled under the warm afternoon sun. Gentle waves rocked a small fishing boat about a mile off the coastline. It was a peaceful day, ideal for relaxing and catching fish. Aboard the boat was Brian Walker, a 40-year-old fisherman from Fort Lauderdale. Brian had spent nearly his entire life near the ocean. Growing up in Florida, he learned to fish from his father, who owned a small bait and tackle shop. Brian spent hours casting lines into the sea as a young boy, hoping for a big catch. Fishing wasn't just a hobby, it was Brian's passion. He knew the ocean better than anyone else in his community. Friends often called Brian for advice on the best fishing spots, knowing he could always lead them to the perfect place. He loved teaching others about fishing and marine life, often volunteering to teach local children how to fish safely. Brian had a wife and 2 young children who often joined him on fishing trips. But on this particular afternoon, Brian had decided to fish with 2 close friends, Mark and Stephen. They had planned this trip for weeks, looking forward to spending a few quiet hours together away from their busy lives. The afternoon started well. The friends joked and laughed as they set up their fishing gear. Brian prepared his fishing rod, carefully attaching the bait. He smiled as he cast his line into the calm, clear water, watching it sink below the surface. It seemed like just another perfect day, but beneath the surface, danger waited. Without any warning, a large shadow moved swiftly beneath the boat. Brian noticed a sudden splash nearby but didn't see anything unusual. He calmly continued fishing, his eyes fixed on his line, waiting patiently for a bite. Suddenly, the calm atmosphere changed into chaos. At least 12 feet long, a huge hammerhead shark lunged upward from beneath the water. Its powerful jaws closed violently around Brian's leg, digging deep into his flesh and muscle. Brian yelled in pain and shock, dropping his fishing rod into the ocean. Mark and Stephen jumped to their feet, frozen momentarily by the sudden and terrifying attack. They watched helplessly as Brian struggled against the shark, gripping the side of the boat tightly, trying desperately to stay on board. But the hammerhead shark was stronger, yanking Brian with enormous force. Unable to hold on any longer, Brian slipped overboard into the water. His friends screamed and rushed to grab him, but he quickly disappeared below the surface. Underwater, Brian fought desperately, kicking and punching at the shark. But the hammerhead held tight, its teeth tearing deeper into his injured leg. Blood clouded the water, making it impossible for Brian to see. Above, his friends panicked, searching for any sign of their friend. Brian briefly resurfaced, coughing and gasping for air. Mark and Stephen reached out, stretching as far as they could, hoping to grab his hands. But in an instant, the shark attacked again, biting violently into Brian's torso and pulling him back beneath the waves. The water around the boat turned bright red, spreading quickly across the surface. Mark and Stephen stared in disbelief and horror. They called desperately for help on the radio, their voices panicked. But Brian was already gone, pulled deep beneath the surface by the powerful predator. Minutes felt like hours as they waited, hoping Brian might somehow escape. But he never resurfaced. The ocean around them was calm again, as if nothing had happened. The friends sat in silence, filled with fear and grief, waiting helplessly for rescue boats to arrive. Below, hidden in the dark ocean, the shark vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving behind only fear and unanswered questions. Rescue boats quickly arrived at the scene, sirens loud against the quiet ocean. Emergency crews searched carefully, scanning the waves for any sign of Brian. His friends, Mark and Stephen, sat silently on their boat, their faces pale and full of sadness. They watched the rescuers move quickly, hoping for a miracle. After hours of searching, divers finally found Brian. His body was floating silently beneath the surface, showing clear and fatal bite wounds on his leg and torso. The rescuers gently brought him aboard their boat, carefully covering him with a white cloth. The tragic news quickly spread, reaching Brian's family and the entire Fort Lauderdale community. When Brian's family heard what had happened, they were devastated. His wife, Laura, felt as if her world had suddenly ended. His two young children, Emily and Jack, struggled to understand the painful truth. They would never see their father again, join him on another fishing trip, or hear his laughter fill their home. The community shared the family's deep sadness. Friends gathered around Laura and the children, offering comfort and support. Brian was remembered fondly as someone who always helped others. His love for fishing and teaching made him well known and respected throughout Fort Lauderdale. The tragic shark attack also raised many questions about safety. Local fishermen became nervous, unsure if their homes' waters were safe. Shark attacks, especially by hammerheads, were very rare in the area. People wanted to understand why this attack had happened and how to prevent future incidents. Marine experts explained that hammerhead sharks usually avoided humans. Attacks often happen by mistake, with the shark thinking a person is food. They suggested the shark might have chased fish near Brian's boat, causing the sudden and aggressive attack. Even though experts tried to explain, people remained frightened. Local authorities quickly reacted. New warning signs were placed along beaches and popular fishing spots, clearly marking shark sightings. Fishermen received safety advice, reminding them to stay alert while fishing offshore. Schools began teaching children about ocean safety, hoping to avoid more tragedies. For months, Brian's family and friends struggled to accept his loss. The space he left in their lives could never be filled. His children often visited the ocean, standing quietly by the shore, remembering their father. Laura became active in teaching others about fishing safety, trying to protect other families from feeling her pain. Over time, people began returning to the ocean. Fishermen slowly regained confidence, understanding that shark attacks, though terrible, were very uncommon. But no one in Fort Lauderdale ever forgot Brian Walker. A small memorial was placed near the shore, reminding everyone of his kindness and passion for fishing. Brian's story became a lesson for the community. It taught respect for nature and the ocean's hidden dangers. Even though life moved forward, Brian's memory remained strong, a reminder to always stay alert and careful in the waters he loved so much. Waters off the coast of South Africa have always been mysterious. They are untamed and ruled by creatures that have dominated the depths for millions of years. The great white shark, the ocean's apex predator, moves through these waters with silent authority. Its black eyes, devoid of emotion, miss nothing. Here, survival is not a question of strength or intelligence, but instinct. The balance of predator and prey is absolute, and those who enter this realm do so at their own risk. On July 5, 2024, two women crossed that invisible threshold. Ava Carter had spent most of her life studying the ocean. At 28, she was an accomplished marine biologist, drawn to the depths by an insatiable curiosity. Her fascination with sharks was more than academic. It was personal. She had dedicated years to understanding their behavior, debunking myths, and advocating for their conservation. Diving with them was not just a job, it was a calling. Following her was Jessica Lawson, a 34-year-old who lived for the thrill of the unknown. As a travel blogger, she had trekked through jungles, climbed remote mountains, and navigated the world's most dangerous waters. Her followers envied her fearless approach to life and willingness to step into places others only dreamed of. The ocean was her latest obsession, and snorkeling near Seal Island, where the sea teemed with life, was an opportunity she refused to pass up. That morning was perfect. The sun hung high in a cloudless sky, casting golden light over the water. The sea was calm, its surface smooth, reflecting the sky's deep blue. A warm breeze swept over the coast, carrying the distant cries of gulls and the occasional bark of seals from the rocky outcroppings nearby. Slipping into the water, Ava and Jessica were immediately transported into a different world. The ocean stretched endlessly in every direction, its depths a swirling blend of light and shadow. Beneath them, schools of fish flashed silver as they moved in synchronized formations. Seals darted and twisted through the water with playful grace, their sleek bodies cutting through the currents before surfacing for air. The two women drifted effortlessly, caught in the hypnotic rhythm of the sea. They were weightless, surrounded by an expanse of blue so vast that it seemed to pull them deeper into its embrace. Everything felt peaceful, untouched. But the ocean had changed. It was subtle at first. A shift in the water pressure, a sudden stillness where life had once thrived. The fish swarming below them instantly scattered, vanishing into the depths. The seals, once carefree, began to move differently, faster and more erratic. They were no longer playing, they were fleeing. And then, from the darkness below, the predator rose. A great white shark, nearly 20 feet long, its body scarred from a lifetime of dominance, had been circling them. It had been watching, waiting. It knew patience. It knew opportunity. The strike came without warning. A wall of force exploded beneath them as the shark erupted from the deep, its massive jaws parting just before they closed around Jessica. The impact was like a bomb going off. One moment she was there. The next, she was gone. Yanked downward in a violent surge of foam and blood. Ava barely had time to react. The water around her churned red, the surface breaking as Jessica was dragged beneath. A single muffled scream echoed in the depths before the sea swallowed it. And then, the shark came for her. She saw it before she felt it. The sleek, muscular body, the cold, unfeeling eyes locked onto her. It moved with terrifying precision, a predator in its element, closing the distance in mere seconds. The impact sent Ava spinning. A flash of white and steel-hard teeth tore through her thigh, the serrated edges slicing deep. Pain flared through her body, but she had no time to register it. She kicked, fought, and twisted against the beast's pull, but the water around her thickened with her blood. The shark disappeared for a moment, then returned with terrifying speed. It circled beneath her, its silhouette a shadow of death against the sunlit surface. And then it struck again. This time, the bite landed across her torso. The force was unimaginable, her ribs cracked instantly under the pressure, her body crushed in the grip of a creature built for destruction. Her limbs weakened, her strength fading. The ocean darkened. Everything slowed. The pain, the struggle, the weight of her body drifting downward. The last thing she saw before the abyss took her was the surface above, light shimmering in the distance. And then, the water closed over her, and she was gone. For 2 days, the ocean kept its secret. The search for Ava and Jessica began after they were reported missing. Boats scoured the area, and helicopters hovered low over the waves, but the sea erased all evidence of what had happened. There were no bodies, no debris, just an endless, indifferent expanse of blue. Then, on July 7th, a fishing vessel pulled in its nets, and with them, something monstrous. The great white was unlike any they had seen. Massive, battle-worn, and a ruler of the deep. When they hauled it aboard, the men joked at first, admiring its sheer size, scars, and undeniable presence. But when they cut it open, the laughter stopped. Inside its stomach, the remains were unmistakable. Human bones, torn wetsuit fragments, flesh still clinging to shredded fabric. The forensic analysis confirmed what everyone feared. The shark had attacked Ava and Jessica, partially consuming them before leaving their bodies to drift. The bite wounds were massive, the depth of the cuts horrifying. There was no mistaking what had happened. The news spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the community. Seal Island had always been known for its sharks, but this was different. This was something primal, something beyond human control. In the following days, new warnings were issued, and safety protocols were re-evaluated. But those who understood the sea knew the truth. There was no controlling it. No cage, rule, or restriction could change the fact that, beneath the surface, the ocean belonged to the predators. Ava and Jessica had ventured into a world that was never theirs, and in the end the sea had claimed them. On June 3, 2024, the sea was calm that morning, an expanse of gray stretching endlessly under a sky of the same muted tone. Eric Larson guided his small fishing boat through the frigid waters off the coast of Norway, his breath visible in the cold air. At 38, he had spent most of his life at sea, navigating these waters with the ease of someone who knew them intimately. Fishing was more than a livelihood. It was his way of life, a routine built on instinct and patience. June was an unpredictable month in the North Atlantic. The transition between spring and summer brought shifting currents and erratic weather, but Eric had faced worse. His boat was sturdy, reliable, and built to withstand the occasional squall that could sweep through unexpectedly. He had set out before dawn, heading toward a known feeding ground where fish gathered in abundance and larger predators, whales, orcas, and sharks, often prowled. He had seen orcas before, dozens of times. They were intelligent, social creatures, moving in pods with a grace that always fascinated him. They rarely paid attention to boats, much less attacked them. Most of the time, they were simply there, gliding beneath the surface, their black and white bodies cutting through the waves like ghosts. Eric had never feared them. Suddenly, the first sign of trouble came. A deep, resonant thud against the hull, strong enough to rattle his bones. The boat lurched violently to one side, and the engine stuttered in response to the unexpected impact. His hands shot to the railing as he struggled to keep his balance, and his heart slammed against his ribs. Then, silence. The water around him had gone eerily still. Seconds passed. The boat rocked gently, but nothing more happened. He exhaled, scanning the surface for what had caused the strike. Perhaps a submerged log or an unseen current pulling against him. Then, the orca rose. It surged from the depths like a torpedo, its sleek body glistening as it broke the surface. Eric saw it briefly. A massive, solitary male, much larger than any orca he had encountered. The creature's black eyes, void of expression, locked onto him. The second hit was devastating. The orca rammed the boat with incredible force, slamming its body against the side with enough power to send Eric sprawling backward. Wood groaned under the pressure, and a deep splintering crack split through the hull. The boat tilted sharply, and water spilled over the edges as it teetered on the brink of capsizing. Before Eric could react, the orca struck again. The impact was the final blow. The boat flipped, the world twisting violently as Eric was thrown into the freezing sea. The cold stole his breath instantly. It was the kind of cold that burned, clawed its way into his lungs, and made every muscle stiff with shock. Disoriented, he kicked upward, breaking the surface in a frantic burst. The overturned boat bobbed a few meters away, but the orca was closer, and it was coming for him. A dark shape moved beneath the water faster than anything that size should be able to. Eric's instincts screamed at him to move, to swim, but there was nowhere to go. The icy water sapped his strength with each passing second. Then, pain. The orca struck him with its massive jaws, clamping down on his arm and torso with a force that shattered bone. A brutal, crushing pressure radiated through his body as he was dragged under, salt water filling his mouth as he fought desperately against the pull. The creature's teeth, sharp and powerful, tore through flesh with terrifying ease. It let go just as suddenly as it had attacked, releasing him back into the water, but the damage was done. Blood billowed around him in a crimson cloud, mingling with the deep blue of the sea. His vision blurred. His breath came in ragged, uneven bursts. The cold and blood loss were working together, dragging him toward unconsciousness. The orca wasn't finished. It circled him slowly, almost methodically, as if assessing whether the fight was worth continuing. Eric barely had the strength to move. He floated in the water, helpless, his body no longer his own. In the distance, the faint sound of an engine cut through the silence. A second boat, far off but moving toward him. A rescue. The orca must have sensed it too. With a final flick of its massive tail, it disappeared, vanishing beneath the surface as swiftly as it had come. The water stilled once more, leaving only the wreckage of Eric's boat and the dying fisherman drifting in the current. By the time the rescuers reached him, Eric's pulse was weak. They hauled him onto the deck, hands pressing against the deep wounds, trying to stop the bleeding. His skin was ghostly pale, his breath barely there. He was still alive, but just barely. The boat sped toward shore, cutting through the waves with desperate urgency. But the damage had been too severe, the blood loss too great. Erik Larsen never made it back. The news of his death spread quickly through the fishing community. No one could believe it. An orca attack? On a human? It was almost unheard of. Scientists and marine experts speculated endlessly. Was the orca sick? Starving? Had it been provoked somehow? There were no answers, only the undeniable truth that one of the ocean's most intelligent predators had done the unthinkable. A search was conducted in the following days. The orca was never found. Some fishermen reported sightings of an enormous male orca patrolling the waters near the feeding grounds, its movements eerily deliberate. Some believed it had left the area entirely, vanishing into the vast North Atlantic. But one thing was certain. The ocean had taken one of its own, and the waters off the Norwegian coast would never feel quite as safe again. The icy waters off Greenland were a realm of silence and shadow, where light faded into an endless abyss and ancient creatures drifted unseen through the depths. This world was untouched by time, where the cold was absolute, and life moved in slow, deliberate rhythms. On February 14, 2024, Simon Hawthorne descended into this world, unaware that he would soon face the raw, merciless power of the ocean. At 29, Simon was no stranger to the sea. As a marine biologist and experienced deep-sea diver, he had spent years exploring some of the planet's most remote and inhospitable waters. He had encountered great white sharks off the coast of South Africa, swum alongside manta rays in the Pacific, and studied the bioluminescent life forms that thrived in the darkest reaches of the ocean. But this expedition was unlike anything he had done before. The mission was to observe the elusive Greenland shark. Scientists had long been fascinated by this species for its sheer longevity. Some individuals were believed to be over 500 years old. These massive, slow-moving predators lurked in the freezing depths, their sluggish movements a testament to the extreme environment they called home. Unlike their more infamous relatives, Greenland sharks were not known for aggression, but little was understood about their behavior. The dive began like any other. Simon and his team had spent weeks preparing, ensuring their thermal suits and equipment could withstand the cold. Even so, the moment he submerged, the water bit through the insulation, a deep, penetrating cold that settled into his bones. His breath echoed in his regulator, thick and sluggish in the dense water. The deeper he went, the more the light faded. Once a rippling expanse of silver and blue, the surface became a distant memory as darkness closed around him. His flashlight cut a narrow beam through the gloom, illuminating ghostly shapes, pale fish with sightless eyes, clusters of brittle coral, and the occasional slow drift of jellyfish, their translucent bodies pulsing with an eerie glow. Then, movement. At first, it was a shadow at the edge of his vision, a trick of light against the ever-shifting currents. But then it grew and solidified, a vast, hulking form emerging from the blackness. A Greenland shark. Simon held his breath, marveling at the sheer size of the creature. It was easily 16 feet long, its massive body scarred and rough from centuries of survival in the unforgiving deep. Unlike other sharks, it did not move with sleek, predatory grace. Instead, it drifted with a slow, patient inevitability, its small black eyes devoid of expression. A scavenger, a relic of another time. His team was nearby, their lights flickering like fireflies in the distance, but Simon felt profoundly alone. The weight of the ocean pressed against him, the silence wrapping around him like a living thing. He watched the shark move past him, its body cutting effortlessly through the water. Then something changed. The massive form stopped drifting. It turned slowly, deliberately, until its blunt snout faced him directly. Simon's pulse quickened. This was unusual behavior. Greenland sharks were not known for curiosity or direct engagement with divers. Yet this one lingered, watching. The attack came without warning. One moment he was suspended in the water, and the next, an unbearable pressure clamped down on his leg. A flash of searing pain. His world tilted violently as he was yanked downward, his body twisting in the shark's grip. A surge of panic shot through him, primal and absolute. Though not as jagged as its faster relatives, the shark's teeth were crushing, designed for grinding through flesh and bone. It didn't thrash like a great white, it simply pulled, dragging him deeper into the abyss with slow, relentless power. Simon fought. His instincts screamed at him to escape, to survive. His hands fumbled at his belt, his fingers numb from the cold. The diving knife, his only weapon, felt clumsy in his grip as he struggled to angle it toward the shark's thick hide. He struck. The blade bit into rubbery flesh, but the shark barely reacted. It continued its steady descent, dragging him farther from the light, the surface, and life itself. The cold grew sharper, the pressure more intense. His vision swam as his lungs burned with the effort of maintaining control. Desperation surged through him. He twisted, forcing the knife deeper, searching for a weakness. Near the gills, there. He drove the blade in with every ounce of strength he had left. A cloud of dark blood billowed into the water. The shark shuddered. Its grip loosened for just a moment. That was all he needed. Simon wrenched himself free, the pain in his legs screaming as he kicked upward, fighting against the crushing weight of the ocean. The surface felt impossibly far away, the light of his team's flashlights barely more than distant specks. His movement slowed, and his body grew heavy as exhaustion dragged at him. Then hands, strong, firm, pulling him towards safety. His team had reached him. They gripped his arms, dragging him upward in a frantic rush. The ascent felt endless. Every second stretched into eternity. The water churned as the wounded shark circled below, reluctant to give up its prey. Finally, they broke the surface. Simon gasped, the frigid air slicing into his lungs like knives. Blood clouded the water around him, his leg a ruin of torn flesh and shredded wetsuit. The pain, once dulled by adrenaline, now roared through him in relentless waves. The team wasted no time. They hauled him onto the boat, pressing makeshift bandages against his wounds to stem the bleeding. The world blurred, the cold numbing everything but the crushing exhaustion. An emergency call, the distant thrum of helicopter blades, a race against time. When he woke, he was in a hospital, the sterile scent of antiseptic filling his senses. His leg was heavily bandaged, the doctors telling him he was lucky, an inch closer to the femoral artery, and he would have bled out in the water. His body would heal, but the experience had left something deeper than scars. The attack defied everything he thought he knew about Greenland sharks. Was it a mistake? A sign of shifting behavior? Or had he simply encountered an anomaly, a predator that had, for reasons unknown, chosen to hunt rather than scavenge? The questions haunted him. Scientists debated the implications, but no answer felt sufficient. Simon knew the ocean had always commanded his respect, but now he understood its ruthlessness in a way he had never before. Forces beyond human control governed this world, and survival was never guaranteed. He had not been the observer for those few minutes in the depths. He had been prey, and the sea had nearly claimed him. The coast of South Africa had always been a magnet for thrill-seekers, divers, and marine life enthusiasts. The waters surrounding Gansbaai, often called the Great White Shark Capital of the world, were notorious for their dense shark population. For years, adventurers had come here for cage diving, hoping to get a glimpse of the ocean's most feared predator. It was a place of beauty and danger, where the line between man and beast was thin. On March 1st, 2025, that line was shattered most horrifyingly. Max Shark Hunter Davis was one of the internet's most daring content creators. At 31 years old, he had built a massive following by live streaming extreme adventures, pushing the limits of what most people dared to attempt. His audience loved the rush, the excitement of watching him dive into the unknown. Max had done everything from skydiving over active volcanoes to free diving with tiger sharks, but his latest adventure, swimming with great whites outside of a cage, would be his last. That morning, Max and his team boarded the Apex, a chartered boat captained by Richard Bowen, a local expert with over 2 decades of experience in South Africa's shark-infested waters. His cameraman and longtime friend, Jordan Fields, and 2 safety divers, Liam Carter and Diego Ramirez, were alongside Max. They had planned this trip for months, securing the necessary permits, studying the area, and ensuring everything was in place for a safe but exhilarating dive. The sun had barely risen as they left the harbor, the boat slicing through the waves on its way to an area known for frequent shark activity. The mood on board was lighthearted, the team exchanging jokes as Max set up his equipment. He had a custom-built waterproof camera mounted to his dive mask, ensuring that his audience would see everything from his point of view. A secondary drone hovered above, providing a breathtaking aerial view of the ocean. By the time they reached the dive spot, thousands of viewers had already tuned into the live stream. Max greeted them as he pulled on his wetsuit, the excitement in his voice evident. He spoke about the dive, how great whites were misunderstood, and how this would be his biggest adventure yet. But no one watching knew they were about to witness something that would haunt them forever. Jordan set up the final shots as Liam and Diego dropped the baited chum cage into the water. The smell of fish oil spread quickly, creating a slick on the surface. It was a common method used to attract sharks for research and tourism. Within minutes, dark shapes appeared beneath the waves. Shadows circled the boat swiftly, their fins cutting through the surface. The first great white arrived, a smaller one around 10 feet long, followed by another slightly larger one. The crew watched in awe, their cameras capturing every moment. Max, always the thrill seeker, didn't hesitate. He secured his mask, looked at the chat scrolling rapidly on his screen, and then slipped into the water. The drone hovered above, broadcasting the incredible sight. Max, floating in open water, surrounded by great whites. At first, everything seemed fine. The sharks were curious but not aggressive, keeping a distance as Max carefully maneuvered through the water. He moved slowly, deliberately, just as he had trained to do. His breathing was steady and he remained calm. The chat was flooded with excited comments from fans who couldn't believe what they saw. But then, something changed. Max's body language stiffened as he noticed movement from below. The water grew darker as a massive shadow rose from the depths. It was different from the others. Bigger, more deliberate. The 18-foot great white had arrived. Jordan, watching from the boat, immediately saw the behavior change. The smaller sharks moved away, their instincts telling them to avoid the newcomer. The predator was dominant and territorial. It was not here to investigate. It was here to hunt. Max tried to remain still, his training kicking in. He knew sudden movements could provoke an attack, but the shark was already locked onto him. It swam directly toward him, closing the distance with terrifying speed. The viewers on the live stream saw everything. The camera strapped to Max's head captured when the great white opened its jaws, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. A second later, chaos erupted. The impact was violent. The shark struck Max with incredible force, clamping its jaws around his torso. His body jerked as the predator dragged him downward. The muffled sound of his scream came through the microphone before the water filled with red. Jordan and the crew reacted instantly. Liam and Diego dove in, armed with long poles meant to deter sharks, but it was too late. The great white shook Max's body, thrashing as it pulled him deeper. The live stream went wild, thousands of comments flooding in, pleading, screaming, begging for it to be fake. But it wasn't. The water churned violently from the drone's aerial view before going still. The seconds dragged on like hours. The team desperately scanned the water, searching for any sign of Max. Jordan's hand shook as he pointed the camera at the ocean, his mind unable to process what had just happened. Then Max's body floated back to the surface. Liam and Diego reached him first, grabbing his vest and pulling him toward the boat. Blood streamed from his torso, his wetsuit shredded. His face was pale, his eyes unblinking. They hoisted him onto the deck, Jordan backing away in horror as the reality set in. Max was gone. The live stream cut off abruptly. Back on land, the internet exploded. Clips of the attack spread like wildfire. News stations picked up the story within minutes, and fans flooded Max's social media with messages of shock and grief. People who had watched the stream live struggled to comprehend what they had just witnessed. It wasn't a movie. It wasn't staged. It was real. Authorities later recovered footage from Max's dive camera. The last thing recorded was the shark's mouth engulfing the lens. The attack sent shockwaves through the streaming community and reignited debates over the ethics of extreme content creation. Scientists examined the footage to determine what had triggered such an aggressive attack. Was it the presence of bait, the movement in the water, or was it simply the unpredictability of nature? No one would ever know for sure. But what was undeniable was this. On March 1, 2025, thousands of people watched, helpless, as Max Davis, a man who had spent his life chasing danger, became the victim of the very thing he loved. The ocean had given him fame, adventure, and purpose, and in one brutal moment, it had taken everything away.